Today we're going to speak about Pesach. Zman Cheruseinu, as it's depicted and quantified by Chazal. It's the time of our freedom. Mishibud Lugula, from bondage to freedom. When we speak about Zman Cheruseinu, it's the time of our freedom. Are we free of masters, the physical masters? We're free of our Egyptian masters? Or it's Zman Cheruseinu, we are free to be able to ascend without any impediments, without any obstacles, without any spiritual obstructions, to be able to achieve and address what our ultimate purpose is and was meant to be, and our destiny was destined to be. This is Zman Cheruseinu. I always mention what we read in Pirkei Avos in terms of the luchos. The Torah tells us that the luchos, the tablets, the letters on the tablets were choros ala luchos. Choros means it was engraved or etched on the tablets. Choros ala luchos. So the Mishnah tells us al tikri chorus el cherus, that the letters of chorus and cherus are the same letters. The only difference are the vowels. But without the vowels, these letters can be read cherus. Ein locha ben chore ela mi she'osik b'Torah. The only person who's the true free man is the one who engages in Torah study. What does that mean? That as a physical human being, we have all kinds of inhibitions, we have all kinds of drives, physical drives, animalistic drives. And in fact, even though we may not have physical masters, human masters, but we are slaves of our own desires, our own inhibitions. How do we somehow extricate ourselves and take control of our lives? A human being is a composite of the spiritual and the physical. The spiritual objective is to do the will of Hashem. A human being is not inclined to spirituality. We're all inclined to physicality. And what level of physicality? We read that after the great flood, the Mabul, Hashem makes a covenant with existence that He will no longer destroy existence with water. Ki yetzer lev adam ra min urov. Of course, the inclination of man is evil from his youth, min urov. And Rashi cites Chazal, the Midrash. What is the word min urov? Mishenirar mimei imo. Man is evil, is inclined to evil from the moment he's cast from his mother's womb. So naturally, every human being is inclined, in the physical sense, even the inclinations are towards evil. But yet, that's not the objective of man. But that's part of the struggle. So there's a struggle between the spiritual and the physical. The intellect, if it's not dictated by and conflicted with the physical, understands the value of the spiritual. Now, how does one achieve that balance or that clarity to take control and to appreciate the value of the spiritual? That despite the sacrifice, a person will make that sacrifice. The person has to have a capacity. The person has to have a level of spiritualization. What is that spiritualization? The spiritualization is what? Is the study of Torah itself. That spiritualizes the person, that we're able to sense and grasp the value of Torah mitzvahs. We have physical senses as human beings, but as human beings we don't have spiritual senses. A Jew has spiritual senses. How do we activate and draw on those senses? It's through spiritualizing ourselves. Torah Tziv Lanu Moshe Morosh Al Kilas Yaakov. The heritage of the Jewish people is the Torah itself. That's the Morosha. That's our heritage. Barasi Yetzirah Barasi Lo Torah Tavlin. God says, I've created the evil inclination, which is the inclination to evil. But what is the antidote? What incapacitates that inclination is the Torah itself. That's the spiritualization. That gives us, as we have a sense of our physical needs, we're able to have a sense of our spiritual needs, to internalize the value of our spirituality. Zman Cheruseinu. When we were freed from Egypt, it wasn't only a physical bondage. We were freed from physical bondage. We were freed from a spiritual bondage. For instance, we know that the tribe of Levi was not physically enslaved. They were not subject to the physical bondage. But yet, when we speak about Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, falling to the Memte Shari Tumah, to the 49th level of impurity, at the point of spiritual extinction, even the Levium, even the Levites who were not bound to the physical bondage, they were affected, they were impacted by the impurity of Egypt. So what was their cherus? In what sense were they freed? The Levi also says Man Cheruseinu. All the spiritual enslavement, incarceration, that we were entombed. There was a spiritual entombment in Egypt. We broke out of that entombment. And because we were able to actually be released, and this is the Kur HaBarzel, the Torah refers to Egypt as the smelter. Through all that we endured for 210 years in Egypt, we suffered all the pain and so on and so forth. When the time came that Hashem had said that after so many years, that your children will be strangers in a land which is not theirs. They will be enslaved, they will be afflicted. Then they will go out with great wealth. When that moment came, it happened exactly at that moment. That's when the release took place. Then we were extricated. We broke out of the entombment. There's a word from the Malbim. We say in the blessings before the Amida in the morning, known as Birchas Kriya Shema, we would say Mi Mitzrayim Yaltonu, Beis Avodim Pidisonu. From Egypt we were redeemed, and from the house of bondage we were freed, we were redeemed. The two Hebrew words, Galtonu, Pidisonu. Pidisonu is pidyon. So he explains the two things that happened. There was a physical release. There was a physical redemption, and there was a spiritual redemption. One is referring to the physical redemption. The other is referring to the spiritual redemption. When we left Egypt, so we speak about Zman Cheruseinu, two things took place simultaneously. We were released physically from our masters, and also we were released from the influence and the environment of Egypt, which is considered the abomination of Egypt, the impurity of Egypt. As I always mention, the name of the Maral, we find that Yecheskel Hanovi, Yecheskel the prophet, refers to Egypt, the Egyptian people, as Besar Chamor Besoram. Their flesh is like the flesh of the donkey. Why they compared to the donkey? So the Maral explains, because of all the 70 nations, the root nations of the world, the nation that's the most devoid of spirituality are the Egyptians. From the word chomeh, chamor, chomeh means material. They're the most physical of all the nations of the world. Besar chamor and besorim. And because there's such a spiritual vacuum, there is a greater basis for impurity. That's why they were involved in sorcery, witchcraft, in incest, adultery. That was the Tavas and Tzrayim. It was the abomination of Egypt. Because they Besar Chamor and Besorim. This is what Egypt was. So there was two things took place simultaneously. There was a physical redemption, and there was a spiritual redemption. There was a gula, and there was a pidyon, the disanu. So we speak about Zman Cheruseinu, Pesach, Chag HaMatzos, Zman Cheruseinu, a time of a redemption. We're speaking about the physical and the spiritual redemption. That's what we're speaking about. And it took place when it was meant to take place. The Shulchan Aruch, at the beginning of the laws of Hilchos Pesach, the Ramos says, Ramosh Isilis says in his glosses, L'chalkon ma'aniyim l'tzorech Pesach. There's a custom to purchase wheat to distribute among the poor for Pesach, for matzahs. So the Ramah says, uminog, it's a custom. The Mishnah Berurah has a little bit of a difficulty because it seems to be, it's more than a minog. This was an ancient enactment. It's based on the Jerusalem Talmud that Jews provided for those who were in need of all the needs for Pesach to do the mitzvahs of the Chag, of the Yom Tif. It's more than a minog. There's a Shalach Kodesh. The Shalach Kodesh writes that in truth, in terms of our own self-worth, we were not worthy of redemption, of Gula. We became of the Avodah Zorah. Initially, what precipitated the bondage? The Medrash tells us the Jews, they stopped doing the Milah. That after that generation passed away, the generation, the Shivim Nefesh, came to Mitzrayim, they decided they want to be like the Egyptians. Just as the Egyptians, the Mitzrayim, were not circumcised, they did not want to be circumcised. The moment they stopped circumcising themselves, they became the enemy of Hashem. And Hashem says, you want to ingratiate yourself to the Egyptians, they will despise you, and they will enslave you. So who brought about the bondage? They brought it on themselves. And ultimately, it evolved. They became over the Avodah Zarah, became pagans, like the Egyptians themselves, due to their master's influence. So if that's the case, why was the Gula? Why was the Gula after the last 10 months of Egypt? They were Nisim Gluyim, they were the Esamakos. Why? Why did it take place? Chesed Elyon. It's Chesed Hashem. It's God's kindness. Because Hashem had promised Avram Avinu at the covenant between the parts, the Bris Bein Absorim, that at a certain point, they're going to be redeemed. But it was a Chesed Elyon. In terms of ourselves, we had no self-worth. We find, based on the Pasuk also in Yecheskel, Hashem, even during the Max Bechoros, Ve'evor Alayich Mismoseses B'damoyach, Hashem passed, when He destroyed the Egyptians, He saw us wallowing in our bloods, in the plural. So Chazal tells us, what are the bloods? Damoyich, Damilo, Dam Pesach, Damilo. The blood of the Pesach and Damilo. At Erim Ve'eryo, we were devoid of mitzvahs. Hashem provided us with the mitzvah of Milah and Pesach that we should be worthy of redemption. But that itself was a chesed. Hashem didn't, in terms of self-worth, we had no self-worth. Hashem had to provide us with opportunity that we should be worthy of Gula, of redemption. That's a chesed elyon. So in essence, what is Gulas Mitzrayim? That we're worthy of redemption. Chesed Hashem. It's God's kindness. What's chesed? Chesed means, although you're not worthy, God does it in either case. That's chesed. Indiscriminate kindness. Even though there is no deservingness. That's chesed. So the Shalach Kodesh says that since Nisan, Hashem displayed His chesed, so we display our chesed. And therefore they originally legislated, they enacted that Jews give moschitim. Jews provide for one another whatever necessities there are to fulfill the mitzvah of the Yom Tiv, matzah, whatever it is, we provided. For that reason, because it's a month of chesed. And when you do chesed, this precipitates chesed. It activates chesed. This is the idea, this is the understanding. There's a pasuk in Tehillim where David HaMelech says, Olam chesed yiboneh. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu create the world? It's chesed Hashem. God had no reason to create the world. Pre-creation, nothing existed. God created existence. Why? To provide an opportunity for the human being that if he should succeed, he should merit the ultimate, which is Olam Haba, a relationship with Him. That's why He created the world. But He had no reason other than chesed, to do kindness where there's no one to deserve the kindness. He's providing the opportunity, a context, to achieve the ultimate. Olam chesed yiboneh. That's what it was. There's an argument
in the Gemara, when did God create the world? Did he create the world in Nisan, or did he create the world in Tishrei? One opinion is he created the world in Nisan. So if existence came about in Nisan, what is Nisan? Nisan was the display, was the first notice of the ultimate Chesed Hashem. Existence came into being in Nisan. That means Odom Arishon, he came about in Nisan. Olam Chesed Yiboneh. So what brought about mankind? Chesed. The ultimate Chesed. So if you understand it, there's a Mahu Afatur. We emulate God's ways. So if God displayed Chesed during this month, which brought about the ultimate, gave the ultimate opportunity, which is Olam Haba, so what do? Minig Liknos Moschitim, or it's Takona. It's an ancient enactment. Goes back in Yerushalayim, time of the Beis Hamikdash, where Jews provided for one another whatever their needs was. If a person couldn't afford the mitzvah Sachag, we would provide for one another. The whole concept in the Haggadah, we say Holach Ma'anyo, Kol Dich Ven Yesav Yechol, that we invite the needy to our homes, whether it's for the Korban Pesach, which is difficult because it has to be pre-designated, or the needy. What is the whole idea? Kol Dich Ven Yesav Yechol. All the needy, whoever's hungry, should come and eat, and we provide for one another. And this is something which is unique to Pesach. This is not by other Yom Tovim. Not the same degree. Because Pesach, because every aspect of redemption, this was Chesed Hashem. This is God's kindness. Undeserving kindness. Indiscriminate kindness, but he provided. So the Gula itself is rooted in what? In Chesed. We see that even though God promised to take us out with the Bris Bein Absorim, but if we wouldn't have had, still Chazal tell us that we had a number of things that in that merit he took us out. And they were all seemingly cultural. We were pagans. Lushini Lushonam, we spoke Lashon HaKodesh Hebrew, the holy tongue. Shmom, we retained our Jewish names. Malbusham, our attire. But that's not spiritual. It's purely identity. We retained our Jewish identity. That itself was sufficient, that merit. The merit of the righteous women, which means they did not despair. The men had no interest in procreating. They gave up. They said, we're going to here forever. There's no point in even perpetuating ourselves. The women believed ultimately there's going to be a gula. There will be a redemption. And they encouraged their husbands. They enticed their husbands. And therefore, there was a Klal Yisrael, due to the women. This is b'schus noshim tzedkonis nigul absein mitzrayim, in their merit. So we needed merit. What about the Bris Bein Absorim? He promised us as much as he promised, but you have to have the people who have a capacity to have relative to spirituality. And even that is not sufficient. He still had to provide 2 mitzvahs. We needed the Dam Pesach, Dam Milo. We needed the blood of the Pesach, the Paschal Lamb, and circumcision. We needed all this. We need the interplay of everything. This is ultimate chesed. We find that each of the Avos HaKadoshim, each of the holy patriarchs, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, emulated God, emulated another characteristic of Hashem. Avraham was chesed. Avraham is analogous to the Amur HaChes. He's the pillar of loving kindness. Yitzchak is din, gvura. And Yaakov is rachmin. Each one is one of the characteristics of God. Avram, the first of the patriarchs, he's the founding patriarch. Ubechoch Chosmin. We conclude the first bracha of Shmon Esrei, Mogen Avram. Bechoch, we conclude with you. Why do we conclude at Avram? Because of Avram, if he wouldn't have initially recognized God to be the creator, there wouldn't have been a Yitzchak, there wouldn't have been a Yaakov. Avram is the one who initially recognized. He boro. He recognized that there's a balabiro, that there's a master to this universe. That was Avram Avinu. Now, what characteristic of Hashem that Avram emulate chesed? Why not rachmin? Why not Rachman? Why Chesed? Why not Din? Why not exactness? Why Chesed? Because Avram understood that where does it begin? Existence came about Olam Chesed Yiboneh. Hashem created existence regardless whether somebody's deserving or not deserving. There was no human being to be deserving. So where does it begin? So as the founding of patriarch of Klal Yisrael, what characteristic of Hashem do you assume? The first characteristic that God displayed. What was the first characteristic that He displayed? That's Chesed. It's interesting. The Shalah Kodesh says something more, that Nisan, Klal Yisrael, was the beginning of a new beginning, of new existence. It was a new existence as a people. Klal Yisrael, we are the 71st nation. The 70 nations, 70 root nations, the Shivim Amimim, we are the 71st. We are the equivalent of all of them. The Mispar B'nai Yisrael. God divided up the nations, the Mispar B'nai Yisrael, according to the number of the 70 souls that went down to Egypt. Shivim Nefesh Yorzu Avaseinu Mitzrayim. There's a corresponding factor. But when did we become that 71st? It happened at Sinai. That's when we became the Goy Kodosh. We became the holy people. We became the Mamlechas Goy Kohanim, the priestly, kingly nation. That was Sinai. But at the time of the Geula, when we assumed Cherus, the Geula and the Pidyon, Mitzrayim Gal Tono Beisavon B'Disonu. This took place in Nisan, the 15th day of Nisan. That's when we left Egypt. That's when we assumed it was a new beginning. There was a new era. It was a new beginning of a new creation. So if it's a new creation, how does a new creation begin? Olam Chesed Yiboneh. That's the Shalom. It's Olam Chesed Yiboneh. Nisan is the beginning of new creation. So what is it? If it's Olam Chesed Yiboneh, so if that's the case, Nisan is a month of Chesed. Because when God begins a new beginning, it's with Chesed. It's a Chesed Elyon, as the very beginning of existence came about as a result of Olam Chesed Yiboneh. There's a Maral, the Maral of Prague says, we find that at the time of creation, it speaks about the first day, the second day, through, then it says, Behi Borom. Behi Borom. So the Midrash tells us that the letters Behi Borom are the letters of Avram Avinu. Behi Borom. Osios Avram. So the Maral explains, the Maral of Prague says in the Kvuras Hashem, one of his works, that what does it mean? The letters of Behi Borom are the letters of Avram, that until Avram came about, the world was that world that he created. Avram, when he came into existence, it was the beginning of a new Bria. It was the ex nihilo. What Avram, what he achieved, his dimension of spirituality, there was no semblance of that until he came about. Mm-hmm. That's Behi Borom. It's not a play on words. Avram is Behi Borom. Literally, he was the equivalent of a new existence, Avram. So if Avram himself, he's a new dimension of existence. So what's a new dimension of existence? Chesed. It's not only he assumed Chesed, the characteristic of God of Chesed, because that's where you begin, when you begin espousing Hashem's existence, monotheism in the world. Because he achieved a level of spirituality which did not precede him, therefore, what characteristic do you assume? That's Chesed. That's Olam Chesed Yiboneh. So Avram was the first Olam Chesed Yiboneh, in spirituality speaking. Klal Yisrael leaving Mitzrayim, that was a second stage of Yiboneh, Olam Chesed Yiboneh. Therefore Hashem displays His Chesed. Sinai was the ultimate level. Chazal tell us, Ger Shenizgar Ketinik Shenola Domi, that a convert who converts, he's like a newborn child. Klal Yisrael at Sinai, we underwent a conversion. Until Sinai, we were Bnei Noach. Or there's a question. We were Noahites. It was a transition. We became Bnei Yisrael. According to Rameir Simcha of Dvinsk, Yaakov and his family were Bnei Yisrael. but they did not have Kedushas Yisrael. They were not the Kedusha. We became the Goy Kadosh. That happened at Sinai. Sinai was ready, was Kedushas Yisrael. But still, it's something came about that did not proceed. There was no nation that was attached to God to assume his Kedusha. The first time ever in existence, this happened at Sinai. So that's another advancement of what? Of something that did not proceed that particular moment. That's what became the 71st nation. We read in Pirkei Avos, Basar Maimors Nivra Olam. The world came about through the 10 utterances of God. God said, it should be, and if you go and you count them, and even Bereshis Bara Elokim is one of the expressions of utterance which brought about existence. Through the 10 utterances of God, the world came about. So Rabbeinu Bachya writes, in the portion of Bereshis, we find that the number 10 is a central number in the Torah. We find there were Asera Nisyonos Nis Avram, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Avram Avinu. There were 10 tests. Why 10? Why not 9? Why not 15? It's 10. There were Esemakos. There were 10 plagues in Egypt. Nisam Gluyim, revealed miracles. Aseret Adibros. The 10 Commandments, called the Decalogue. According to Rashi cites, of Haigo, that all Targum mitzvos are included within the Aseret Adibros. That's all-encompassing. The Taryag, the 613. Within that 10. 10 encompasses everything. It's all-inclusive 10. We find that when Avram Avinu sent Eliezer, a slave, to find a wife for Yitzchak, who was the future matriarch of Klal Yisrael, Rivka Himenu. So it says he took Asora Gemalim. He took 10 camels. Okay? And he took gifts. Why is it important for us to know how many camels he took? Whether he took 10 camels or 15 camels. And then it says, when he realized it was Rivka, it says he took 2 bracelets, Asora Zov Mishkolam. They weigh 10 weight in gold. So Rashi says, what's the 2? It corresponds to the luchos, Shnei luchos abris, and the 10 is the Aseret Adibros. What does that mean? So what was the objective of this mission? To find a woman who's qualified to be the matriarch. Who's the matriarch? The matriarch is the woman who ultimately will facilitate and bring about a Klal Yisrael. Who's Klal Yisrael? The world has no value unless there's going to be a Kabbalah Satorah. As it says, there was a precondition to creation. Im Yikablu Yisrael Torah Butav. If Klal Yisrael receives the Torah, accepts the Torah at Sinai, it will be good. If not, the world reverts back to pre-existence. So, what must the qualification of the matriarch and patriarch must be? To produce a nation that has relevance to say Nasav and Nishmat Sinai. If that does not come to fruition, there's no existence. So what is the value of the matriarch? The matriarch has to be the one who's qualified to facilitate and guarantee that the 10 utterances actually bring about a result. Therefore, how many camels does he send for the mission? 10, which alludes to this. Asaras of Mishkolam. Who is the aim? She's qualified, she's the equivalent of the Aseret Adibros. That her body, Esemakos, what was the value of Esemakos? The 10 plagues. Nisam Gluyim. Why do we need revealed miracles to such a level? It's the first time God ever revealed himself to such a degree that you could barely deny his existence. Bechira, I mean, all existences that a person should make choices. Hashem had to put them in a corner, literally almost forced them to recognize him. But why? We saw him. Why? Because if not, the world couldn't continue. We were so embedded in the impurity of existence, in the spiritual morass of Avodah Zorah, paganism, It's like a person had a thick cataract. The light barely penetrated the eye. That's how entombed we were over there. So you had to have Nisim Gluyim to chip away at that, to give us a sense of Kedusha. What is Kedusha? That's Esa Makos. Again, why 10? Because unless there'd be 10 minimally, the Aser Maimaros, the 10 utterances of God, has no value. We leave Egypt. Aser Sadibros. What opens it? Aser Sadibros. Hearing the Dvar Hashem. That is the confirmation. That solidifies it. That crystallizes it. At Sinai, we came to a point over there. We find there's a famous Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud tells us that the reason why we drink 4 cups of wine, the Arba Kosas at the Seder, is because it corresponds to the Arba Lashoni Gula, Arba Lashoni Gula, the 4 expressions of redemption. Each cup. The Torah tells Moshe Rabbeinu, go tell the Bnei Yisrael, Ani Hashem v'otzeisi eschem mitachos sivlus Mitzrayim, I will take you out from under the sufferings of Egypt. V'itzalti eschem, me'avodosam, I will save you from their work. V'go'alti eschem, b'zron netuya b'shvatim gedolim, I will redeem you with my outstretched arm, with great judgment. V'lokachti eschem li li'om, and ultimately I will take you from my people. V'yishalochem le'elokim, and I will be your God. So here the Balaturim writes, the 4 expressions of redemption are until the end of time, the 4 exiles. The first exile was the Babylonian exile. That was Bavel. And then we had Parsamodai, the Persians and the Medes. That was the second exile. Then we had Yavon, the Greek exile. Then we had the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash temple, which was by the Edomites. These are the descendants of Esav. Esav Soni Liakov. Ultimately, when it will be extricated from that? That's the final one. That's Lokachti Eschem Lilom. Arba Lashon Shel Gula Keneged Arba Malchios Uba'achron Ksiv V'Lokachti Keneged Edom. Why? I will take. To be extricated from the Edomite exile, it's not so simple. It's already, all the exiles combined are not the equivalent of what we were experiencing since the Churban Vayesheni, since the destruction of the Second Temple. So evidently we're so embedded, they're holding on so tightly, they're not letting go. It will need tremendous, tremendous power to release us from that. We find, the Medrash tells us that when Yaakov dreamt on the Har Moriah, he saw a ladder. And he saw angels ascending and descending. So the Medrash tells us, who are these angels? So the Medrash says it was the archangels of the 4 exiles. The first angel ascended 70 rungs, came down. Parsamodai, the Persian angel, archangel, so many. The Greek archangel, so many. Edom, the Edomite angel, he just kept ascending and ascending and ascending. He's not coming down. Yaakov was terrified. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Yaakov, I will take him down. I will bring him down. The only one who could bring him down, he's not coming down unless HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes him down. This is Lokachti, it's Chazoka. It's interesting. Chofetz Chaim writes in his introduction to the Chofetz Chaim that if the Bayesheni, if the second temple was destroyed because of Sinas Chinam, because of unwarranted hate, so it's clear. So here it stands, the Beis Mikdash stood and it was dismantled, destroyed because of Sinas Chinam. So how could it be restored? So evidently, until this issue is resolved, and we are rehabilitated from sinas chin, from unwarranted hate, we're not going to be able to rebuild it. So what is the obstruction? What is the obstacle? Sinas chinim. There is still sinas chinam. It's so embedded in us. But what's the base of sinas chinam? What is the base of sinas chinam? Is a Rameir Simcha. Rameir Simcha writes in the Haftorah of Shabbos Chazon, that we find similarly by Yosef when he had the dream, that when there's plenty, when there's bounty, there's no envy. Everybody's totally focused on his own success. When is there envy? And everybody's looking at everyone else when people are needy. When you're in need. When a person has a material lack or insecurity, it's a problem. Then there's envy. What does envy breed? It breeds Lashon Hara. It breeds unwarranted hate. Everybody believes the reason why his predicament is because he attributes it to someone else. You are the cause. Now, if a person would have proper bitochon, proper faith, there'd be no envy. You have because that's what God provides. And God could provide. Why isn't He providing? Evidently, you're not supposed to. It has nothing with anyone else. There's no reason to be envious. There's no reason to speak negative about anyone. It's all rooted in a lack of clarity. Now, what gives us clarity? Chazal tell us that Hakol kol Yaakov v'yadayim v'dei Esav. The voice is the voice of Yaakov, but the hands are the hands of Esav. So the Medrash tells us in Echo that when are the hands of Yaakov? When the kol is not the kol of Yaakov. The hands, Yadayim v'dei Esav, with the kol is not kol Yaakov. When Jews did not study Torah, and the children not being educated in Torah, that's when the Yadayim v'dei Esav chas v'sholom. That's when Esav's empowered. How do you incapacitate Esav? Only with Kol Yaakov. You have Kol Yaakov, there's no Esav. But yet it says, Baal Turim Sai says, it's only Lokachti Eschem Lilom B'chazoka. Why B'chazoka? Let's learn Torah. Let Klal Yisrael learn Torah. We learn Torah, the Yadayim not Yidei Esav. We have, it says base Yosef is Lahova. Yosef is the flame. Esav is kash. He's consumed. So what's the issue? Evidently, it's not simple. To achieve that level of purity of voice, of kol, of Yaakov, not every Torah doesn't incapacitate him. Evidently, you need a special level of Torah. You need a special level of siyata d'shmaya. To merit divine assistance, you have to be worthy. So when ultimately when it says, V'lokachti b'chazoka, what level of achievement do we have to achieve? Not simple. A very advanced level of purity, of mitzvah, of Torah. That's lokachti. We need an infusion of siyata d'shmaya, which we have no relevance to. It's interesting. The Dav L'shon Gula were all chesed. That we were extricated from the 4 exiles, every one of them was chesed. There was a degree of chesed. We weren't worthy. What happened in Bovel? Tremendous assimilation. Porus and Modai. Unbelievable. We were at the point of total annihilation. The last moment. Unbelievable chesed. Because of that chesed, it was a Kabbalah Mi'ava. Klal Yisrael reaffirmed out of love the acceptance of Torah. Because they saw the chesed Hashem. They saw the Avos Hashem. And what's Yovon? What they did. Choshchu Eineim. They blackened their eyes. And yet, Rabbi Miatim, unbelievable victory, miraculous. And during Bayis Sheni, there were no Nisim Gluyim. There were no revealed miracles. Hanukkah was the only revealed miracle. But what was the miracle? Was the victory. The Chashmonoim, a handful of people. How do you defeat? Trained in the most advanced level of combat. How do you defeat these people? It was a nes. Yiborim b'yat chaloshim. Tameim b'yat torim. Everything. Rishon b'yat tzadikim. This was Hanukkah. Everything, every step was chesed. But why is it chesed? Because originally, Dal Lishon Igula v'chesed. It was chesed. And that chesed is a new beginning. And each one was a new beginning. The ultimate chesed is the Gula Sida. When Hashem will bring Mashiach, there's Volo Mashim Hartzion Lishbar Esar when the Redeemers will come to Hartzion Lishbar Esar to judge the Esov, Boyshel Hashem Amlucha, and God will have the kingdom. That's what Lokachti. That's when Hashem will take it b'chazaka, will take it with an empowerment. But it has to be wrested from them. It has to be wrenched from them. Without wrenching it from them, they're not releasing. Esav is holding on for life. Literally. His fangs are in us. It's like Lahavdil, you have a pit bull. Pit bull locks its jaws, you cannot remove those jaws, those teeth from a person. What do you have to do? You have to actually put a bullet through its head. That's the only way you could release it. This is b'chazoka. That's the tenacity of Esav. The sino, Esav Sonei Liakov. It's not getting any better. There may be lulls of that hate, that intensification of hate. It's interesting. When we speak about the four expressions of redemption, at that moment, we're still in Egypt. Egypt is not one of the four exiles. This was the setting for us to become a Jewish people. This was the Korah Barzel. We just finished the purging, the smelting, to be able to go to Sinai. But why now? Because again, everything needs tikkun, needs perfection. Through who will the world be perfected? Only through Klal Yisrael. Bereshis bara Elokim, b'shvil Yisrael shenikur Bereshis. God created the world. The objective of existence is Klal Yisrael. B'shvil Torah shenikur Bereshis. It's only the combination of Torah and Yisrael that will bring about that level of perfection. So what is the level of perfection? Unfortunately, we needed Dalet Golius. We need 4 exiles. We had to undergo that. But when we finish one, we have to make it to the next one. Therefore, we need 4 expressions of redemption. So the 4 expressions of redemption which are mentioned regarding ourselves, that had to be in place to deal with the future. For us to be able to address our role in existence to perfect existence. That whatever deficiency that exists or that we created has to be corrected. And that gives us the ability, because we have the Dal L'Shonei Gula, to bring it about. There's a word from the Maral and the Ramchal, where he says, the Maral explains it this way, and the Ramchal says the same thing, but not based on the word. We find that the Regalim are referred to as Moadim. Moadim. So, literally, the word Moed is translated as times. Elo Moadei Hashem. These are the times of Hashem. They're referred to as Mikroi Kodesh, assemblies of Kedusha. Okay? But the Maral says the word Moed comes from the word, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, V'no'arati l'cho mibein shnei akruvim. I will meet you between the 2 cherubs. Meaning the communication, the Shekhinah, the divine presence came from between the cherubs. I will meet you. Moed means it's a meeting time. So he explains the Maral and the Ramchal that in Judaism and Torah, holidays, Yom Tovim, are not commemorative, but rather it's a reenactment of the moment at that particular time in history, at that particular moment. For instance, on Tez Zayin, on Tez Vov Nisan, what happened? There was a Makas Bechoros. We were in a state, we ate the Korban Pesach. We were acting, we were being freed, we were being extricated from what we experienced all those years. We were moving towards Geula. That's what happened. The exact forces that happened, that Hashem released at that moment, on the 15th of Nisan, those exact forces are released by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says, we find many mitzvahs of the night which are purely rabbinical. For instance, Dalit Kosos, the 4 cups of wine, corresponds to Dal Lishani Gula, 4 expressions of redemption. It's rabbinical. But what's the value? Haseba. We lean when we drink the 4 cups. When we eat matzah, we have haseba, we lean. Leaning is an indication of a free man. What's the value? It's all Jerabon. It's all rabbinical. What's its value? We eat moror. Moror, to be a Torah obligation, is only when we have the Korban Pesach. Today we have no Korban Pesach. It's to commemorate Vayimoris Chayeyim. They embittered our lives. But it's rabbinical. What's the value? So the Ramchal writes that because you have these influences, you have to create a vessel to capture those influences. You need a kli. You need a vessel. So although it may only be rabbinical, but if we create an infrastructure which is symbolic of what originally happened, the Daled cups of wine corresponds to Dal Lishani Gula. Drinking that in a posture of cherus, of freedom, haseba, you've created a setting, only Chazal understand this, that we're able to be beneficiaries of those kochos, of those influences. Vayimor chayim, bavoda kosher, we eat the bitter herbs. Or whatever we do during the Seder, every one of them is to be beneficiaries of the hashpah, of the kochos, of the influences that night. That's what we do it. This is moadim, elo moadei Hashem. Hashem meets us. Hashem enters. We speak about leil shimurim, and it has a reality. As HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, He will not allow the mashchis, the destructive forces, to enter the Jewish home. Till today, it's leil shimurim. Even though a person says kriyashma alamito, we say kriyashma to be protected from certain nether forces. On the night of Pesach, it's different. It's less. Why? That was then. If it's only commemorative, so what? It should be the same Kriya Shema Lamita. We have to be protected. The answer is no. It's Leil Shimurim. It's a night of watching, because the same influences which happened thousands of years ago, they're reenacted. It happens that they repeat themselves. As a result of that, there's innate protection. Therefore, it's a Leil Shimurim. This is what happens. We say in Agora, Chayvod Odom Liros is Atzmo Kilu Yotz Mitzrayim. A person has to see himself as if he himself was in Egypt and left Egypt. Rambam writes that, when Rambam lived in Egypt, there was slavery. So Rambam writes that a father says to his child, you see that slave? Well, it's a man. That's what we used to be. To visualize it, to understand what it means to be a slave. And Hashem redeemed us. So you had a visual picture of what it meant to be a slave. But why is Chayv Odom Liros Esatzmo Kli Yotz Mitzrayim? You were the slave because you'd only appreciate redemption if you understand what slavery means. So if you say it's purely commemorative, it's difficult. But if you say it's a reenactment, and it's a repeat of the same hashpah, the same forces repeat themselves, so therefore we have to create that reality of Kilu Yotza. Then you truly become the beneficiary of the Gula. And what was the Gula? It's interesting. The Ramchal writes that a Jew has an obligation to mention Tzis Mitzrayim twice a day. And that's what we have in the 3rd paragraph of the Shema. So he says, when you say, I am Hashem, when you say that to fulfill the mitzvah, immediately you become the beneficiary, that you merit a divine assistance, that you're less subject to the evil inclination. When you say that, you become less subject. Why? Fulfilling a mitzvah, Zechit Tzis Mitzrayim, remembering that Hashem took us out of Egypt. But what lies in that? What happened when we left Egypt? And we said, there was a dual redemption. We were redeemed in the physical sense, and we were redeemed in the spiritual sense. All the physical impediments, all the spiritual impediments, obstructions, and blockage was removed. We became functional as spiritual beings. That's what happened when we left Egypt. When we say, we mentioned it affects, but what about Pesach night? Where that's when it actually happened. That's when we experienced that metamorphosis, that transition from being physical, totally physical beings, to have relatives to being spiritual beings. Gedolim tzaddik miyosem alchei ashoris. A tzaddik is greater than the greatest angel. We become fully functional in terms of our ability to make choices. That began Leil Pesach, the 15th night of Nisan. So if a person actually is able to internalize that reality and to be focused and not to rush it, when is it over, and be distracted with other issues. It's like a person is mining platinum and diamonds, and he says, let's go waste some time. Every moment is infinitely precious. How do you get distracted with nonsense, with foolishness? That's Chayv Odin Liras Tzatzchiyuv Mitzrayim. Every moment of that night, you're experiencing Gula. Gula in the physical sense, Gula in the spiritual sense. Both. But again, you have to focus. And you have a chiyuv. There's a mitzvah Sibri Tzis Mitzrayim. Vigarta Levincha. It's a mitzvah saseh. It's a positive commandment. The interaction. Famous word from Chaim Brisker. All throughout the year, it's zecher. We mentioned God took us out of Egypt. The night, it's question and answer. We enter into a give and take. We ask, we explain. That's Sipur. It's a story. It's a dialogue that we have. That's what it is. So it's not, let's get it over with. That's not what it's about. So to be able to be a beneficiary, to peel away all the layers of impurity, of physicality, of the entombment, of Golus, that's Leil Pesach. That's the 15th of Nisan. That's what it is. And the more we understand and appreciate what its value is, we will be greater beneficiaries of its value.